Hello and welcome to The Loudspeaker, your definitive guide on how to scale your startup.
This first tip for every fintech startup is
what are the media and press saying about us? How are we being perceived by these people?
PR stunts are any activities that allow you to engage with the audience.
I don't agree with the fact that all publicity is good publicity.
Here is where we talk to communications professionals from all around the world to let you know what are the best practices and cool ideas that you can implement for your startups. Kent, would you be able to start by telling our listeners who you are and your experience in SEO, PPC, and SEM?
Yes, my name is Kent Lewis. I'm president and founder of Anvil Media. We're a digital agency based in Portland, Oregon, in the States. We are celebrating 20 years in business this October 2020. And I started my career optimizing websites back in 1996 and have been building teams ever since. I've been at 9 agencies, founded 2, co-founded 2, started doing my own thing after I was fired from 2. So it works. It's worked out well for me, and I think for my clients and my team as well. And we do specialize in organic and paid search and organic and paid social, a little bit of email, a little bit of Amazon. Basically.
Nice. Are you able to tell us why you were fired? Were you doing some black hat stuff like dodgy
no,
SEO?
No, it's never the work. I was a top sales guy, top team lead. I was very popular with my team. The problem was the bosses. The first time, actually, there's some good lessons here. In 1999, I co-founded an agency, and there were 6 of us originally. We'd all worked together before, and the founder owner, he put up his 401k, his savings, to launch the brand, and we brought clients in and built a team. Went from 6 original founding members to 35 members in a year and a half. And again, this was the .com boom. And the mistake I made was we, on a handshake, myself and the founder, who was a mentor and an idol of mine, we never had paperwork on equity. So we did almost $2 million our first year, and this isn't capitalized billings. This is like real billable revenue. We still didn't have an equity agreement in place. So as we started to talk through that, there became more and more friction. And one of the other co-founders that was a senior member of the team, like I was on the management team, he didn't get along with her. I decided, perhaps foolishly, to side with her when we were going to negotiate the equity. And well, we're now a $3 million business. And so maybe there should be a more equitable share. We're talking single digits and asking for another couple points on still single digit equity. And when we really built the business, and decided to fire both of us instead of just her. The next week I founded Anvil as a consultancy, but wasn't ready to do my own thing or hire employees. And that took the second time, which that team, I left in the company immediately at the end of 2000. The economy caught up with all agencies. They couldn't survive without the 2 core founders that were the 2 co-founders, myself and another gal. And 9 months later, they sold. Just basically the people moved over with whatever clients were left. They went from 35 people to 12 or 11. And I ended up 6 months after that taking over my team again, because my idol and the original founder, who had been my previous boss at a different agency, he died of a massive heart attack at 42, due, I think, largely to the stress of the .com crash and the business failing. So they needed me to take my team over, and those guys fired me because they were a almost 40-year-old agency that didn't understand what digital was. I didn't get along with them. It was a terrible fit, and that's when I decided I won't work for anybody else, and that was in 2002. But before I went back to hiring employees at Anvil, because I still wasn't ready, I had contractors, former employees I worked well with. I had an opportunity to start an email marketing agency, so I co-founded that with 2 friends. And after about a year of running that, I realized I don't like dealing with clients on HTML designs and spam lists and all the, the web dev and the emails. I like the strategy, but I didn't like the build part. So I decided to go to Anvil full time the end of 2003 and start building a team there. So Anvil has run on and off the first 2 years, contractors the second 2 years, and then the next 16 years I've had a team that I've managed actively.
Awesome. Well, it definitely sounds like you're the perfect person to come on and discuss what SEO has been like over the years, because you've got a short, long wealth of experience. And I know you've been in the game since 1996. Just out of curiosity, what was SEO like back in 1996?
So, I left a career in public relations, talking with the media, trying to get our clients covered, to a sister agency. Literally, I moved downstairs when that team who I'd been helping grow their business through PR said, we need somebody to run our marketing and maybe help our clients, but they didn't even know what that meant. And frankly, I didn't either. So what I really owe the creative director at a company called Vivo Media, that's no longer around, he said, meta tags. And I'm like, meta what? And so I still, to this day, know very little code. And so at that lunch, I wrote that down. Then I went back and researched. I was like, oh, there's something called meta keywords, which have not existed for well over a decade. I could drop a keyword into the code, and then suddenly we would rank. Keep in mind, this is 96, 2 years before Google became a public search engine. And so I was optimizing websites for 14 search engines: Northern Light, Lycos, Web Crawler, Excite, all of those. And, you just tried to try and pick. Nobody had any meaningful market share. In fact, Yahoo was a big traffic site, but it didn't even have a real search engine until Google powered it a couple years later. So SEO, there were no books, there were no conferences, there were no classes. So I actually just trial and error. We had a dozen clients that we built websites for at that agency, and I just tested different things. And but after about just under a year of building my discipline of understanding SEO, and keep in mind, I took my PR background right into SEO, which was a huge difference between the code level folks that, whether you had a degree in computer science or you fell into it as a copywriter, poli-sci major, doesn't matter. Most of the SEO people I know code, and they're passionate about the back end. That's never been me. I'm passionate about the front end, which is getting my clients found on cool site of the day and getting in publications like Windows Magazine. One of our clients, Tektronix, was corporate site of the year. So that was using my PR background. The beauty is that was just one piece of coverage and then it disappeared. But as soon as Google came along with its PageRank and link algorithm, all of that PR I'd done shot my clients to the top of Google, and they stayed there. So I had all this already built, the hub and spoke of authority of inbound links. So my clients from 96, arguably, if they're still around, are benefiting today. So that was the biggest thing I saw, was a lot of SEOers have still, some of my friends are gray and black hat, I've always been white hat, are still always trying to outsmart, the tens of thousands of PhDs, some of the smartest minds in the world are at Google trying to catch spammers and trickery and really poorly thought out SEO practices that work for a second and penalize you for months. So we've never taken that approach. I've never agreed with that approach. And I've had a couple gray hats on my team over the years and had to have course corrected them, basically. Yeah. Some of my clients saw huge gains within a month or two, and then they were penalized for 6 to 12 months once algorithms changed, the Panda and the Penguin updates and so forth. So the biggest change was really one player from 14, Google, who's 90+% of market share, and also social media being a large credibility factor that wasn't there initially, but that's just an extension of credibility in my mind, and under 5% of the ranking algorithm, we estimate.
It's mad to think that there was such a divided market share when it comes to search engines, because now, I think to say I'll Google it or I'll Google it, it's such a common verb that it's crazy. It's such a, it's so deeply entrenched in our vocabulary, all over the world. And I'm pretty sure that goes for languages, not important what language you speak.
You bring a very important point up. The news hit today here in the States. The United States is filing an antitrust lawsuit against Google for illegal and deceptive antitrust practices. And, I kind of like Amazon, kind of like Facebook, I think these companies are too big and are too powerful. And if you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, I recommend it. It's the social side, but it's all data. And Google is really not terribly less innocent of manipulating and selling and using that data. It's just that they're not necessarily changing the behavior like social media or belief systems like social media's. Conversation for another time. But you're right, Google is not so ubiquitous that they're getting poked at from multiple countries, including the United States. So
going back to that time in 1996 and between now, this is going to be really hard for you to do. And I get that I'm going to be very impressed if you're able to summarize this, but how has the industry changed? And maybe if you're able to just either if you want to explain it through a chronological sense, or if you just want to say like then versus now, however you want to tackle this question.
Sure. So what I would say is it's easier than you think, and it doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, I remember 10 years ago, I was on a panel and this guy was like, SEO will be dead in 6 months, 10 years ago. And I was like, you are smoking crack. It will always be here. As long as people want to search, there will be SEO, search engine optimization will be a component. Now it has evolved, but I can make it very short evolution. So when I first started, it was 100% content, or let's say 80-20 rule, 80% content, 20% code. That is how, Google, before Google, those engines looked at what was written or typed on the page, the HTML content, and then looked at a few things like title tag, meta description, meta keywords, and then boom, you were done. Then Google came and screwed that up and added something called credibility, because what I'm getting at is there are 3 C's of SEO that have not changed in the 24 years I've been in the business. Content, code, credibility. So it shifted from 80% content. Today, it's probably 30 to 40% content. Code went from 20 to 30% content to, now again, it's probably under 20% content, because the content management systems, CMS platforms are ubiquitous, like WordPress. And so what's changed the most is Google came out big with the credibility factors and signals, the quality and quantity of inbound links, and then it added citations, domain history, domain expiration. Site speed is the biggest, I think, change in credibility, but it's also arguably a code level issue. The biggest change in code is really for us been schema in just the last couple of years. Schema markup, semantic search, voice search, position zero click, whatever you want to call it. But the biggest change in 20 plus years, starting 96, that I noticed was the credibility. So I mentioned my background in PR has helped me with that 3rd C of credibility, because I was always out shopping my clients' websites as something bigger than just what they were selling at that moment. So the credibility, the biggest change there is social media, right? The social signals, social sharing, all those signals. And then secondarily, that other fun thing called local search, right? Local SEO, which combines the best and worst of SEO, and social and a little bit of paid, obviously. So it's, I think, obviously the most nuanced and challenging aspects of SEO, because you can learn the code, you can follow best practice, a fast, clean code, done. CSS, HTML5, making sure the keywords are on the page, great. Making sure the keywords are in the code in the right place, title tag primarily, and schema, great. So the hardest part to fake, which is why Google weighs it so heavily, is the credibility. Who's linking to you and how credible are they, and how natural and organic are those links in that link profile and the anchor text coming in. That's, even though the link and the anchor text quality and quantity hasn't changed since 98, 22 years, all those other signals, as Google has gotten smarter, site traffic, stickiness of those sites, that credibility factor is nearly impossible to fake, and therefore is probably the biggest change.
Yeah. I suppose that's a good thing though, like to be encouraging
totally.
kind of like credibility. Yeah. If you're interested in seeing how Publicize can grow your startup, sign up for a free PR assessment on our website. And for a limited time only, exclusively for the loudspeaker listeners, you can receive an SEO assessment as part of your package for any tier of service at no extra charge with this special promotion. To find out more, visit publicize.co/LSpromo. I would also be interested to know, like from your experience and everything, like how you foresee SEO changing over the next 10 years or so.
So I'd say, we may see more sea change in the next 5 years, arguably, than the next 10. That's just a kind of, I like to predict more out there than the common guesses. In fact, for the last 15 years, we have been predicting each year what we think is happening across digital, not just SEO or search. I believe that the biggest changes are, and it's been proven slower to adopt. I've been a huge proponent of voice search, zero click, position zero. And what's been interesting is the adoption of smart speakers, smartphones with personal digital assistants has not created the adoption levels that we predicted. It's there, but it's not quite there. the advertising model has still not been clearly delineated for Google, Amazon, and Facebook in terms of voice search. So we're interested to see how that's going to happen. The last 2 years, we predicted this is the year. Last 3 years, this is the year of voice search. Last 2 years, this is the year that advertising truly happens in voice, and it still really hasn't happened. So that's been a surprise. So that will happen, knock, knock, within the next 5 years. By 10 years, it'll be ubiquitous. I think the other shift that was promised 5+ years ago was in-app search, right? So more beyond App Store optimization is optimizing for in-app searches. And again, not really scale, not really a thing. It will be more and more of a thing as there are more distributed ways to search. I think the biggest change in the last 5 years has been Amazon, right? It's gone from nearly no percentage of search, and still only it's under 1% or so, but it is half of all product searches, which is really critical for consumer packaged goods, manufacturers, and retailers. Amazon is a place you have to play. And for the last 3 years, we've been huge advocates in helping our clients migrate to Amazon, arguably even late to the game at 3 years. But what we've seen recently is Amazon is crushing, just like Google has been accused of and has rightfully crushed a lot of businesses by just changing rankings and algorithms, mainly to benefit themselves, which is the antitrust case, is that Amazon has been crushing our clients, just randomly flagging. They can do whatever they want. They don't seem to have, because it's their own search engine and their own marketplace, they don't have the same rules, nor do they need to, that Google's facing right now. Now, I think they will be facing more scrutiny and regulation. But for now, you're so beholden to Amazon, it's not funny. Plus, in the world of SEO that I come from, it's once I get you into the rankings, that's up to you to deliver on the product. But in Amazon, the client's ability to deliver on inventory and service and shipping and having to determine the right pricing impacts our ROI, whether we're optimizing feeds or building ad campaigns. So Amazon, I'll just say pretty clearly, is frustrating to say the least, and I'm less excited about it than I ever was. Just in the last couple of months of seeing the frustration from our clients. And so we are moving our clients more than ever direct to consumer. Some clients are doing the digital transformation with us thanks to COVID. But by and large, you have to look at the core channels people are looking, and search is still a core channel where ideally I tell my clients 100% of your traffic, your revenue, your leads should be from organic search, but it never is the case. So you have to augment with paid, and then you add in some paid social, some organic social, a little local, sprinkle in some Amazon if you have the product. That's kind of how it's evolved.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, yeah, I do agree with you to some extent. I think, well, entirely, I'd say. I think that many of these companies are growing quite big. They're almost like technology dictators
Yes,
in their own little,
exactly right.
These are their countries, and they make the rules. And
Right.
yeah, it's crazy. But
it is.
Hopefully, yeah, you're right. Hopefully, these companies will be, I suppose, there'll be checks and balances in place, or at least initiated to protect people.
And to follow up on your question, I would say, so in the next 10 years, do I see somebody actually dethroning Google without government regulation? Probably not in a meaningful way, whether it's coming out of China or Europe or somewhere else, some other Baidu-like engine. I think it's more likely coming from the commerce side of, and will Amazon be broken up? Probably not. So it'll be interesting to see of the triumvirate of Facebook, Amazon, and Google, if any of them get broken up, or if other natural market energies and trends usurp them, which I think is very unlikely. And so, frankly, where others I've heard are predicting many more channels, I'm actually not predicting that, because those guys can crush the competition or they can acquire them one way or the other. And so it makes it very difficult. But, Microsoft used to be an 800-pound gorilla outside of just their Office suite. And they have shown that they cannot compete effectively in the world of search with Bing. I remember when they were 30% combined market share once they, after acquisitions, and they're at, 2% or less with their, including LinkedIn. So they've, it's, not everybody is an 800-pound gorilla in every space. So there's certainly room for a shift, but I don't see a sea change. I don't see them breaking up as much as at least Google probably needs to.
Awesome. Well, my final two questions to you are based on advice. So the first one, I would love to know what advice you would give to anyone who wants to develop a career in SEO now.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic question. And I've actually written an article on that. So I'll just recap it: 5 steps to a successful career in search engine marketing. So I can be SEO, paid, or even social, frankly, any career. But here has been my experience. And I've been an adjunct professor for 20 years. I teach workshops quarterly for an organization called SCORE in the United States. We have our own Anvil University internally at Anvil. So education is key. But what I've found is the easiest way to start a career is just read, and start with all the free websites, like the search engine journals. And when I wrote this article, there were publishers like Marketing Pilgrim, but Search Engine Land, SEO Roundtable are still around. So I think those are important. And some of the more out there blogs, whether they're part of a bigger organization like SEO Moz, or it used to be SEO Moz, just Moz, or part of even HubSpot can put out some great content. But start with the publications and blogs, and then those individual celebrities within search, and just see what they're saying. Follow them, get on their feeds, and then obviously move to more, I think, advanced and immersive technologies like podcasting. There used to be something called Webmaster Radio. Let me see if that's still around out of curiosity. Let's click on that. And then also, a lot of YouTube has a great video resources. I think that's a great way to do it. So read, watch, and listen. And those are like the first 2 steps. Then I would say it's important, if you're looking to get hired, even at a junior level, is to get credentialed. So Google has, Google Ad and analytics certification. I think understanding GTM is important for tagging campaigns and understanding how to utilize Google Analytics. We have, as I said, created our own certification. More universities are creating, usually continuing ed. That's what I teach under at Portland State University, is a search marketing certification as part of a digital certification. Some major universities, San Francisco, SFU, University of British Columbia, have bigger degrees, but there's still no formal degree in what this is. So it's really hard to get talent in that space. So getting credentialed helps. It is just one more checkbox rather than me thinking you really understand Google Ads. I'm Google Ads certified, and I'm Bing certified, and I've never managed a campaign in my life because I've hired teams since, as soon as AdWords was a thing. In fact, back in '99 when GoTo launched, before it was Overture, before it was Yahoo, I was, taking a look and dropping $50 in the campaign. It might last 6 months. That's how low the spends were back then. I think the next step is to network. So get out there, both in forums and groups. Join if you have a local area trade organization. So SEMPO was absorbed into the Digital Analytics Association, which is, for better or for worse, that's what happened. But back in '06, I co-founded SEMPDX, which is short for Search Engine Marketers of Portland, and it's still alive and healthy with 200 members and monthly events. Obviously, COVID has twisted that up, but they have a big annual event as well. So you can network virtually and in person at area, local, or virtual events or associations. And then lastly, it just starts with applying, not just applying for jobs, but applying your knowledge. So if you aren't able to get somebody to pay for your expertise, volunteer and give it for free to get the experience and the ideally referrals and testimonials. So working for nonprofits that you're passionate about, doing in-kind work or trade, so it lowers their risk or their cost. So I've, over the years, worked with an exotic car touring company called World Class Driving, a heli skiing operation in Bella Coola, British Columbia. I choose brands if I'm going to do trade, it's going to be stuff that I love to do or would not normally pay for, but would be happy to use those services. Over the years, I've done that. And so that's a good way to get your foot in the doors, is build a portfolio, basically. And then you have something to share along with a resume as real work experience.
Awesome. I think that's really good advice, especially, to get your foot in the door, just volunteer for things that you're passionate about. And now I'm sure you could go on and on about this last one, but if you can summarize, like if you're going to give one nugget of information, perhaps, what advice would you give to anyone that wants to improve their SEO for their business or brand?
I would say the one recommendation we've seen the absolute greatest return on is schema markup. So going to schema.org, looking at figuring out which of the markup languages are most appropriate for your site. There's product listings, there's events. Well, I'll just give you an example. We mark up our blogs and our articles, but one thing we marked up recently was an article about augmented reality marketing. And that was one of our gray hat SEO guys that was really our expert on schema at the time. Just under a year ago, he wrote an article about augmented reality because he was passionate about it. We don't do augmented reality, but he wrote about it. And if you do a search for augmented reality marketing, I think we're still in the top 3. And so what ends up happening is we started getting a lot of traffic for that term. And I was like, why are we getting that traffic? Now, caveat, this ranking for that is great. Our impressions, we had 1 million impressions last month. So a lot of exposure. That doesn't translate into as much traffic and almost no noticeable conversions because we don't do augmented reality. But this, it looks like on my search result, it looks like augmented reality marketing that we're number 2 behind HubSpot, which is kind of impressive. And who's behind us would be some e-consultancy, search engine journal, top ranked blogs, like these really large publishers or large agencies. And we weren't even trying. But what that led to was an editor at The Economist out of Spain reached out and said, I'm doing an article on augmented reality and marketing. Can you be a resource? And lo and behold, I ended up being a resource, even though I was clear to him that we don't do Anvil, we don't do augmented reality at Anvil, but I was a resource. And the article came out and we got a lot of exposure for that. And it's in their applied section of The Economist. And it's just, I spent an hour on the phone with him to get 1 sentence quote. That's kind of the nature of PR, which is part of the reason I got out of it, but it's a very powerful discipline. I still love it. So that's the power of augmented reality, of schema markup and augmented reality. I guess that's pretty powerful too, especially now with COVID.
Yeah, that'll be big. That'll be big. It'll be up there with VR as well. Thank you so much. I think that's great advice. I'll check that out because it's something that I didn't really have any knowledge on prior to this conversation, really. I'm still a novice at SEO. But if people do want to follow you and keep up with what you're doing, the work you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to connect and collaborate would be on Twitter at Kent J. Lewis. You can follow Anvil at Anvil Media on Twitter or any other social platform. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm just Kent Lewis on LinkedIn, one of the first 1 million subscribers and apparently the first Kent Lewis. So I have a good URL, easy to find. Just Google me at Kent Lewis. And then check out our website. Our insights section is deep at anvilmedia.com, and you can connect with me through the contact us section.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your SEO knowledge today. And all the best.
Thank you.